Hi, my name is Sam Led, and welcome to The Fearless Now. This is for you in the nosebleed seats, if you're looking for an easier way to approach anxiety, stress, and unhealthy habits from the inside out. There's no techniques and no strategies, so sit back, relax, and let me be your peace of mind Uber driver, here on The Fearless Now. Welcome to The Fearless Now podcast. My name is Sam Led, and this is episode number 5. Episode number 5. I can't believe I've done 5 already. My first go at it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've been able to kind of see who you really are underneath your thinking. See that expansive nature of who you are. And hope you've been able to just get quiet. And maybe you found that feel-good feeling in 1 or 2 of my episodes, or maybe just right now, just listening to my voice. You know, the purpose of this podcast is really for all of you to see the nature of thought and thinking, that you are not your thought and thinking. There's so much more to you besides your bills, besides all your responsibilities, besides your illnesses and your debt and whatever it is going on in your life that's causing you anxiety. And so today we're going to talk about a different way to look at anxiety. You know, our society looks at anxiety like it's a terrible thing. But what if it isn't? What if it's just thought moving through us, that we don't have real agency or control over anxiety, but our mind convinces us otherwise, that we need to act on something because we're so anxious, or we need to pick up the phone and call someone because we're so anxious? What if we just sat with our anxiety? And that's very foreign to most of us, you know, in this very instant gratification, social media, technology-based world we live in, and especially in this world of pandemic, this new world order that all of us are adapting to. And as a human species, we are very resilient. Our default state is in resilience. Who we are is resilient. But our mind, very innocently, our personal mind, which is a machine that is designed, that has software built in to protect us, to make sure that we stay safe. But when you think of the nature of our thinking, the nature of our supercomputer, our mind, really has not had a software update since the paleolithic era, that it reacts to situations in our life like we're always being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. It doesn't know the difference, and it creates an amazing story, an amazing ongoing melodramatic narrative that sometimes we get sucked into. All of us do. It's so convincing. Our mind is kind of like the most brilliant used car salesman. Think of the slimiest polyester suit-wearing used car salesman trying to sell us, you know, a car that is probably not that great or has problems, but we believe the story about the car and we buy it. And the brain will sell us a bill of goods because it thinks it's doing the right thing, but it doesn't know the difference. But we do underneath our thinking when we are calm, when we are in the moment, when we are feeling good in the moment, despite our bills, despite our health issues, despite our age, despite our past traumas, our past failures. But what the personal mind does is package up all those traumas, all those failures, all those past experiences of anxiety and defeat, takes all of that, puts it on a reel-to-reel tape recorder, if you remember what a reel-to-reel tape recorder is. I do, as a Gen Xer, or in between the technology revolution here, and replays it for you when you have to make a decision that is life-changing, or you have to do something, or your boss is asking for something at the last second, or you're on a time constraint, or you have to speak in front of someone tomorrow, and you're so anxious because that old tape is playing in the back of your mind. And then the judgments come in and the critical analysis comes in. And what the mind does is it gives you all these different options in a split second. It gives you all these different scenarios it's playing, how difficult it's going to be. But then you take a deep breath, and then you hold on, and then you drop out of that thinking. And we do it all day long. We just don't pay attention enough. As Sid Banks, the brilliant Scottish mystic, who, like other modern and old-fashioned prophets and gurus and spiritual leaders, Pick your favorite spiritual superhero, whether it's Buddha, Muhammad, or Jesus, or whomever, that we have mental health within all of us. We just don't know it because we're caught up in the machinery. We're caught up in this wound up mind trying to figure it all out. That is not really the truth. That is not your truth. So a different way of looking at anxiety is maybe we got it all wrong, that it's not what's going on outside of us that's causing us to feel anxious, but the habitual thinking, the story that's going on inside of us in our supercomputer, our mind, that's trying to inform us of the outside world, but falls on its ass, glitches, makes errors. And when we see that, when we see our anxiety for what it is, maybe it's not all that bad, even though it feels shitty sometimes. I've been there. I've had my day in anxiety prison, just like you have. I've had some terrible moments, depressive moments of insecure thinking, and I will always have that. We all will have anxious thinking. What if we can just be okay with our anxiety? What if we can just be okay with our depression sometimes? Yes, it's disruptive sometimes. But what if we see there's something bigger, that our amplified, wound up, caught up mind is just a wound up, caught up mind in the moment. But in the next moment, it will calm down. I have a story I'd like to share with you about an old client real quick. A client came into my office. I had a healing practice in town. I was doing acupuncture and Reiki and all these different modalities. And he was trying to quit smoking, really anxious guy. He suffered from anxiety and he was recently retired and it was really upset and depressed about getting older and being retired from working in the auto industry for 35 years. And he came in reluctantly with his wife. He wasn't very friendly to me. He didn't say much. He sat on the treatment table and I talked about how acupuncture works to calm down the mind and the nervous system. And he said to me, he said in front of his wife, he's like, my wife, you spent all this money on these other therapies. Nothing works. This is more money wasted, or it says something like that. So I listened and I said to him, I'm going to do this session. Your mind will calm down. I want you to pay attention, not to me or to your wife, but to how it feels once you start to calm down. And he kind of gave me a look like I'm some weirdo, woo-woo practitioner. So I did the session and 35 minutes later, he was completely dropped out of his thinking in the moment. He smiled at me. He's like, I see it. I see it. Fast forward the next day, I get a call from him. He's yelling at me at the phone. He's like, I feel anxious again. I want to smoke again. I can't believe you sold me a bill of goods. You're full of baloney. You don't know what you're doing. And I just listened. And I knew that he was caught up in his anxiety again. I knew he was going to get anxious again. And I said to him, just sit with me right now on the phone. Don't say anything. Just sit with me. If it takes an hour, you can put the phone down until you calm down, until you relax back into yourself. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's all caught up in his judgment and his mind and his thinking. He's all wrapped up in his insecure thinking. And I know what's going on. He's just caught up. And about 10 minutes later, I put my phone on speaker so I could get some other work done. 10 minutes later, he says to me, okay, I'm okay now. I see what you're saying. And he wrote me an email and a testimonial, very, about it, seeing his anxiety for what it was, that it wasn't real, it was all made up, that, it was okay to be anxious. And that's my whole point, is our anxiety is like energy moving through us. It moves, the thought and the thinking around anxiety just moves through us in the moment. It doesn't exist. And if we can just sit still with our anxiety, despite how uncomfortable it is, we won the game. And when you can see that life is a game, like your work is a game, like your relationships are a game, and enjoy the game, getting in the game, despite the lumps, despite the difficulties, despite the anxiety, you'll drop out of your thinking and into the present moment more. You'll see the calm and the well-being more. And here's the way of looking at anxiety. I want you all to really think about this without really thinking about it. Anxiety, insecure thought, uncomfortable thought, whatever it is, however it manifests for you in the moment, is a barometer. It's not there to terrorize you or that there's something wrong with you that you need to fix or you need a technique to calm it down or something that you need to change within yourself because you're broken or there's something wrong with you. You know, a lot of psychologists and other practitioners, they are well-meaning people, highly trained people, but they were trained to look at it the other way around, like anxiety and these other things is something that we need to fix, that we need to change our brain chemistry, change our behaviors, change the way we look at things, whatever. Pick your metaphor for it. But what if it's just a barometer? That anxiety is kind of like the check engine light on the car. If the car is, say, if your car is overheating, the coolant light goes off, or there's a malfunction in the computer somewhere. One of your sensors goes off and your check engine light comes on. That's the same thing with anxiety. It's alerting you that you're too zoomed in on a problem, that you're too zoomed in on something going on in your life. It's not there to freak you out. It's there just to tell you to back off, that your thinking's a little cloudy right now, that you can't see things clearly. It's not the time to look for answers to your problems when you're caught up in anxiety. And that's what anxiety is. It's the most brilliant barometer, despite how uncomfortable it is. And when we are zoomed in into the problem, the brain innocently zooms into it. You know, the brain is kind of like a forensic psychologist, or, you know, think of like a detective, you know, pick your favorite detective show, Law and Order, right? It's zoomed in to find pieces of the puzzle, try to figure it out. And those thoughts are so heavy and so zoomed in, it's attached to feelings of anxiety, feeling uncomfortable, having an upset stomach, whatever it is. But when you see it for what it is and you just pull back and know and have faith and hope that you will drop out of your thinking, that you're not going to stay anxious all day long. You may stay anxious for a little while, but you still can create, you still can get up on stage, you still can do a presentation in front of your coworkers anxious. A lot of professional musicians and baseball players and hockey players and anyone that is in the public sphere that have to perform, they all get anxious. But they all play through it. They all talk through it, and they do it anyways. But when you are by yourself, or you're worrying about something and you're caught up in something, when you're not at work, or you're sitting at work in your cubicle and you're just caught up in anxious thinking, just realize it's a barometer. It's telling you to back off the accelerator pedal of sped up thinking. It's kind of like if you ever flown to San Francisco, a lot of the time the San Francisco airport is fogged in. The airplane has to circle the runway until the fog clears sometimes. This happens a lot up in San Francisco. I've flown from Santa Barbara to San Francisco a couple times, and I remember being delayed an hour in circling the runway until the pilot gets okay from the tower that it's safe to land. Well, that's the same thing with anxiety. Don't look for answers to your problems when you're caught up. Allow the thinking to settle. And if you get really anxious before doing a presentation, just see it for what it is. You're not going to self-destruct. You're not going to just disappear into the anxiety dungeon. You're going to be okay. I promise you. You know, these crippling thoughts that we all experience from time to time disappear. They're not real. And when we see our anxiety for what it is, and we see that it's, not that big a deal, when we just sit still with our anxiety or do a presentation despite how anxious we feel, and realize, that it will disappear if we just sit with it. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and comment on the podcast, and tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors. If you tell your friends, they tell their friends. This podcast is more accessible to people who really, really need it. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It is an honor and a privilege to be here for all of you, for you, and you in the nosebleed seats. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. I look forward to seeing you for the next episode of The Fearless Now.